One challenge that we constantly face in today's world of testing, we're always teaching about discrete topics. For example, Selenium automation, API testing, component testing, and so on and so forth, but we rarely see them all brought together into a single place, working cohesively to figure out how to actually cover different risks of different web applications. In today's tutorial, we're going to create a framework for doing comprehensive web testing using industry standard best practices such as page objects. We're going to create functional browser tests with Selenium, and then we're going to do visual end-to-end tests using Screener.io. We're going to run in massive parallel, and we're going to automatically get robust test reports with videos, logs, and screenshots. We're going to use technologies such as Sauce Labs, Selenium, Sauce Visual, JUnit, Java, and Maven. And we're going to learn how to put all of those together into a single framework for doing automated web testing. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, then go ahead and jump in. For setup, it sounds like some people were able to do it, others were not. Most importantly is ensuring that you have your accounts. At Screener, I've thought about it and realize many people are having trouble with it. If you don't have your account, no big deal. I've come up with numerous backup strategies to help you all. So don't even worry about this anymore. As long as you have your free Sauce Labs account, your username and access key, that's what's important. And let's talk about how to get that, right? So you sign up, you provide whatever email you need, you get your free trial, you'll sign in. And I just want to make sure everyone knows how to do this. So you'll sign in. You'll come here to account and you'll come to user settings, and in there you will see your username and access key. You need to capture those, copy those, and you'll either put them in your local environment or in your Git pod. We'll talk about Git pod in a moment. Okay, so that's sign up. And if you don't have a Screener account, grab any one of these 5 API keys as your Screener API key environment variable. How to set one of those in your environment depends, of course, on your system. But if you're on Mac, just like me, let me clear here. I'm just so tired. You're going to be doing my goodness, I'm forgetting. It's export, right? And then you're doing Screener API key, and you'll do the same thing for Sauce username and Sauce access key. And then you'll put your value in there, and then you'll hit enter. I'm not hitting enter because I want my API key associated with my account, but then you'll store it. And then of course you check it by, as I showed you all, using echo command. Echo $, let me show you all my Sauce username. Oh, of course, Etchy, such a command does not exist. So, there you go. So you see, and so that should be the same for each of your environment variables. If you're having issues, I know actually some employees have issues in their systems where they can't set environment variables, which really sucks. But in that case, we'll just be hard coding your username and access key into the code, and we'll make it work. So no problem there. All right. So if you're struggling with the local environment setup, you're going to do the Git pod setup. And as I kind of shared everybody a little bit already, you're going to fork the repository, and then you're going to prepend with this URL. So let me show you all that again. I'm going to kill it here, kill this one, and we'll do it again. So you're going to come here, and you're prepending gitpod.io to your fork of my repository. So you're not gonna, you shouldn't have anand valod in here. You should have your username in there. The URL is gonna create it, give it a second, and then it's gonna install everything. Give that a second too. Let me zoom in here for you all. Still going, still installing. No problem, let it install. Once you're in that environment, it's basically a Java environment ready for you to write your code. So if you have the right username and access keys for Sauce Labs and Screener, even though Screener is no longer even mandatory, So there are a few states that everybody can be in, okay? State number one is you have access to all of the products and you have all the API keys and you can run tests. That's state number one, okay? If you don't have access to all of the products and you only have access to Sauce Labs, that's totally okay. Visual testing is going to be a small portion of this, and you won't need to do a lot of coding there anyway. So it can be like a break. If you're in that second state of not having access to Screener, you don't even have to worry about setting the Screener API key if you don't want to. If you want to participate and you don't have access to Screener, you can use one of the 5 Screener API keys I've provided here. And in fact, I'm going to do this with one of them now. Let me grab this one, okay? And I'll show you how to get set up that Gitpod environment. So let me copy this. So let's set up a Screener API key, for example. So you're going to copy one of these. You're going to go to your Gitpod and you're going to paste it. You're going to allow this to paste all the time. Allow. And then in here, you can see we need to supply the Screener API key. So I'm going to take one of the ones you all have just to make sure we're all in the same state. So let me grab this one, come back here, and we're going to paste it. And so now the way to check that it was set correctly is with an echo command, just like before. Why didn't it echo? Did I misspell something? Man, this view is so bad. I don't know why it's like grainy. Let me double check here. Screener API key. Maybe it needs to be in quotes. Let me check here. Try to put it in quotes. And then we'll redo this command, echo Screener API key. There you go, spelled right. There you go. So see, so that should work for everybody regardless, unless for some reason your work doesn't allow to do this in a browser. And so then, okay, so you can run this command to test everything without Screener. This will only test your Sauce Labs connection. So you come here, you paste it. And for me, it's not going to work because I didn't enter my Sauce username and access key, but it'll test it for Sauce Labs. And if you want to test the full connection with Sauce Labs and Screener, you just remove this part here, which only points to a single test method, and you run the sanity test class, and then it'll work for you for the entire environment. All right, so you can see, for me, it was even successful. Yeah, mine was successful. And let's see, test run 1. And yeah, so you guys should be in this state. If you can't get your local environment going, you have to go work in Gitpod. So please follow the Gitpod setup instructions to go there, okay? Same goes for everyone. You go to sanitytest.java. You're gonna, in here on line 22, you're gonna do .set data center, and then you're gonna do data center .eu central, just like that. Let me try something else. And got it. My bad. There you go. That is what that should look like. So if you are in EU, yeah, that's a silly thing in Sauce Labs that if you're in EU, it doesn't work. And so now set it up just like that, like I have here. And now we're going to give this a run again. So you're going to run your command, which will be that. And so now it should run in your EU data center, and hopefully you don't get unauthorized. So now if I come to my Sauce Labs, see I'm in US West, come to EU Central, and I'm going to drop the test method located inside of sanity test.java. So, okay, worked for me from EU. So fingers crossed that it works for you from EU as well. So yeah, mine ran. Hopefully it works for you all. So we're done with the setup. So our very first topic is end-to-end browser tests, also known for many of us as Selenium tests. End-to-end simply just implies we're testing the system. Really, it should imply we're testing the system from the database down to the document object model, and we're testing that entire stack from the DOM to the database. But sometimes they're called end-to-end tests as screen-to-screen flow tests. That's not my definition of end-to-end test. My definition of end-to-end test is you test from the DOM to the database, up and down the stack. That's an end-to-end test. So let me show you all our application under test. So that's going to be saucedemo.com. And you can see it's an application that has a login, right? We can use standard user and secret_sauce and log in. And it's a simple e-commerce website, right? You can add items to a cart. You can view the cart. You can check out. You can provide information. No validation here because it's a dummy site, right? No point to have validation, but you can go through the entire checkout process. So in terms of this application, right, we got to think about what is the business value that this application provides. Well, of course, the most important business case is having the ability to buy a product and check out. That's how the application makes money. All right. So wonderful. Let's talk about these tests, and I'm just gonna command this out so I'm not running into you. This one was super easy, right? This one was already there for you to kind of see how to. You have the login page, you visit the login page, and then you assert that it's displayed. If we look underneath the hood, which is I created the car for you all, so I want to show you all underneath the hood. You can see that each page object, right, has its own corresponding methods that perform the appropriate operations, like the login method, right? It does all the stuff that it needs to do to interact with the login fields and the login button and so on and so forth. Some important things to note here is that you don't want your page object to have more methods than actually needed to interact with the page. And so you don't want to see weird stuff in here like reading Excel files or, I don't know, getting access to a database or anything like that. You want the page to abstract only the HTML interactions that a user would make. That inherits from an abstract base page. And then here we have a number of common things that each of the page needs, right? Of course, every page needs a driver. Getting the driver, there's a WebDriver wait that we're using to interact. Taking snapshots is something we'll talk about, but you'll be able to use that in every page object. And yeah, that's probably if you have an abstract base page or a base page class, my suspicion, if you're doing it well, is it should look pretty much similar to this size. It should not be very big because the way it works out is pages typically only have a few common things that they need amongst themselves, and the rest of the stuff should be spread out across the pages. And what we definitely don't want to see in here is like any of the other stuff that I talked about, like getting access to databases and so on. Data management, for example, you can put in a totally separate class and object and just use it inside of your tests to set that up. Let me come back here. So what else is important here, right? It kind of looked like, especially for people from US, without seeing this code, it kind of looked like magic, right? You just wrote some tests and they just ran. But yeah, underneath the hood, it's extending this sauce-based test class. This class comes from a few packages here. So we have sauce bindings that have been making everything relatively easy for us to interact with the code, except set it directly hard coding sauce username and access key. Even I don't know where that went, which is super funny. I need to figure out where in the API that belongs and then add it. So that's where all of those packages are coming from. And then there are also these sauce bindings JUnit version. That's where this class lives. And so just by inheriting from sauce-based tests, you get all of those capabilities to just run the test and everything works as appropriate with very little configuration, right? I mean, if you even just comment this out and just run this single test, right? No setup, no teardown, no nothing. Everything will just come out as it should. So it runs, give it a second to go to Sauce Labs. And let me go to US West. So you can see less than a minute ago, the test ran. It got a test name, it got a test status. It was even added to a build, which many individuals miss. This builds is actually very good to group test together. We'll see a little bit more about that later. And then of course, you got the test itself with the logs, with the video. It's always fun to watch the tests run. So there's the test just opening up the page. Cool. And then the actual login works test. This was where we were gonna do a challenge to do the login work. So let's do a little bit of it together just to show you all the solutions. So of course, first we're gonna have the login page, right? Which we already got. So then we're gonna visit it, the login page. And so then if we come to our application, what do we want to do next? Well, we want to log in, and then let's do that. So we can do login page dot login, and then it's asking a username. So let's give it a username. There you go. So once we are logged in, we arrive at the products page. So without the products page, we want to add an item to a cart, right? So let's create a new products page. And that'll take in a driver, of course. And then with that, you want to add an item to a cart, add any product to cart. That seems like a reasonable method for us to use. And then we're pretty much good there. And the rest, I'm not gonna spend time so you all are watching me type. Let me just copy and paste the rest in here for you all. And so again, if your solution didn't work for some reason, you could always just come here to end-to-end solution test. And then we'll copy the rest. We adding any product and then finishing it up with these few steps here. So then using the checkout step page, right? So if we add an item to a cart, and then you could have had a step here like shopping cart page, and then you could have navigated it to that or gone to it there and seen this part like this. I bypassed that because I just went directly to checkout step 1 page, which is this one, checkout step 1, and then started manipulating the information. So checkout step 1, revisiting it, entering personal details, and then finishing the checkout. And let's just run this. We're going to use Maven now to start running our tests. And so we'll do Maven test, dtest. That allows us to pass in different kinds of parameters. So we're going to do end to end tests like that. And so now we're going to run this entire class, which is going to be 2 tests. And don't peek here yet. Let's come back to Sauce Labs, come to test results. And we got app renders. And here's login works. Let's come here and watch that test run. There it goes, logging in, checking out, and everything worked well and successful. Give it a second or not. Let's see if it fails. So you can see all the log points to even the test job link. All right, so in my point of view, if we think about a HTML page and the page object, right? So the page object is supposed to represent the HTML page. And so if we're interacting with it, right, we're performing user operations on it, like logging in, for example, and then we're checking data on it, why wouldn't it go into the same class where it can live close to the methods that are using it and just all be in a single place? And so whenever we need to make a change for a login page or a cart page, you go to one place where all of those changes need to be updated. And so, yeah, in my view, all of it belongs there together related to a single HTML page. This one right here is a wonderful atomic test. All it does say is, did my application render or not? If my page comes up, our application is rendering and working. If the page doesn't come up, the issue that it can be is your HTML and CSS is not working, right? Your page can come up and the server can be working, but the rendering of the HTML didn't work. So that's one problem. And then the other problem that can be is your server is down and then you can't access the web page. And so, but both of those really point to your application not up and working and not really anything else. So let me log out here and come back here, and let me open the DevTools and come here to Application tab, okay? And in our Application tab, what you all will notice is there's this cookies. And if we come here, we will see that there's this saucedemo.com cookie. I'm gonna clear it. It doesn't have anything in it anyway, but I'm clearing it. And so now it has nothing. So if I wanted, for example, to access the inventory page without logging in, inventory.html, you see that I get redirected back to the login page and say, you need to log in, right? This is very common behavior of applications where they're restricting login to applications. So when we actually log in by providing standard user and secret sauce, it will drop a cookie in our application, letting the application know that this user is allowed to access this stuff. And so actually we can perform those operations, as many of you may know, actually through Selenium, but of course it's just because it's native browser behavior. So if we come here to the console, for example, and in the console, we'll have this document object. This document object is always available for us to interact with our application. We can do document.cookie. You can see there's a property here available for us, and then we can set it. And then you will just provide, I've used it before, so let me add it here. So this is how you would set a cookie for our username, okay? And now let's do username, and that's actually good enough. And so now if we come back here to our application, we'll see a session username. And now if we try to access our application, inventory.html, we are able to successfully log into our application without actually logging in through the UI, just by dropping the cookie. So that's how this application behaves. It doesn't mean all applications behave like this. There are multiple types of login mechanisms depending on your application and tech stack. I've actually done a deep talk about tackling different types of logins. There are logins with JSON Web Tokens. There are logins with two-factor authentications. There are logins with OAuth. And each one of those has a way that you can simulate that login without actually touching the UI. Now that we understand how this application works and how we can actually bypass the login page, for example, you can see how we can break down our checkout test into something that's much better, right? We don't need to check the login page. We don't need to do anything. In fact, what we can actually do, what's actually important, is having an item in a cart. If you're here and we come here to local storage and we add an item to our cart. Here's adding an item to a cart. See, we added one. Look what happens to our cart contents key. It gets added this object here. This 4 just represents the Sauce Labs backpack. If we added, like, let's say this Sauce Labs Bolt t-shirt, we'll have another object added, which I guess is object number 1. And then if we add this one, it'll be object number 5, and so on and so forth. It'll represent the objects that exist in our cart. So another mechanism for us to not touch the UI, but instead simulate the state that we want of our application before actually needing to interact with the UI. And all of this, again, can also be done through Selenium as well, through JavaScript Executor. But let me show you that all in the console. So that part is here, part of local storage, right? And so if you want to perform it, you just use the local storage object, and then you can set item, and you'll just need to supply the key and the value. So the key was cart contents, and then the value, let's say, I think we added like 1, 4, and 5. Let's do 7, for example. And now if I do this, you guys should see this number increase up here. So let's check our cart here. You can see nothing. And then if we refresh, we got 1 item in our cart. So we've just injected an item into our application's local storage by using JavaScript. And of course, we all know there's a JavaScript executor object on Selenium that we can use to perform the same exact operations. Cool. All right. So setting all of this information, with all of that set, right, we still haven't logged in. We haven't clicked the Add to Cart button. What we can do, however, is now simply, why is it acting weird now? There we go. Let's add that item to the cart again. Cart contents, let's do 1. And then refresh. Good. Go to the cart, go to checkout. And so now at this point, right, we can start our checkout journey by simulating those 2 previous actions. We come to checkout step 1 and then implement the rest using Selenium. We have previously navigated to the login page, of course. So that part is easy. Now we are removing the UI login, in which case we are going to perform a few operations that I showed you all in the browser. So that's there. I made it easy to just uncomment that. Of course, you'll pull in the appropriate imports. Yes, good. And so here, of course, we are adding a cookie, right? And standard user, pre-clearing sessions, local storage, just to have in a good state, adding the cookie. Next, we're going to, here is the logic to add the item to the cart, like that. Using, you can, of course, using JavaScript executor, local storage.set item, and then setting that item. And then here, we are checking that it has the correct item count, which is just ensuring that our application is in the right state before proceeding. So here we're basically arranging, doing the arrange part of our test, setting our test up in the right state. So let's run this to see what it actually looks like. So here are some of the actions, right? Opening up our page, loading the URL, deleting the cookies to clean up the state. Here is one of our, clearing local storage. Here's us adding a cookie to our browser. And of course, if we can load this URL, that means we are in the right place, which is wonderful. Here looks like we are adding our item to the cart. And then we're refreshing, because you need to refresh once local storage has been updated. And now, at this point, looking for the shopping cart badge. It's there, wonderful. And then I just wasn't able to find back to product. Yeah, the rest of the code is going to look like this. Let me show you all back to our end-to-end solutions tests. That user can check out Atomic, right? Checking app is in the correct state. Here's the final piece. This is really the Atomic test part of our entire test, which is here, navigating to that checkout step 1 page, visiting it, entering the personal details, finishing the checkout overview, and then asserting that checkout complete page is displayed. That is the test.
You can see that my website, there's an older version of it, but it was created on a nice 1080p resolution. And when we were zooming down, because the website is responsive, interesting stuff like this started to happen, where text was bleeding over the logo, the search icon started to push down into an inappropriate place. And again, not super impactful, but it, as a brand, if you have a publicly facing brand, it certainly skews the image of your brand, and the user is not going to be impressed by the design of your website. So you'll be here in visual tests, and then you'll try to implement the visual test. There's a bunch of stuff already set up for you here. So yeah, let's take a look at the solution together here. So all of this, let me actually even walk you guys through the code just so you can understand everything that's going on. Got our regular driver, got our parameters for the browser OS and the viewport size that we want to run in. So this is obviously a 720, or is this a 1080? This is a 1080p resolution, or 720, I forget. Anyways, this is a very common resolution. However, it's actually not the most popular. If you guys wanted to check the most popular resolutions, you can just, Google it, of course, most popular browser resolutions, and target your application that way. Or you might even know the usage of your end users, and you can target your visual tests that way as well, based on their usage, starting at like the most important and working your way down. Just setting up a bunch of capabilities. What's new here for Screener is you're just adding this little block of the Screener API key. The project name is going to be where your tests, it's really, I would say, the application name that you're testing. So you might be working on multiple applications, maybe you're working on just one. That's what would go here. And I'll show you exactly how this correlates when we run the tests. And actually, let me change it back because I had a bunch of stuff saved there. Viewport size, normal, fail on new states. This is just saying that when I run these tests, I don't want a failure just because this is the first time we've seen this snapshot. And I only did that for CI purposes, but for typical flows, it might be useful initially to enable it. Depends on your preference. Then we're just pointing to the Screener hub to run our tests, and then our visual flow. And while it does that, let me actually run it. Visual solution tests. So I'm going to run it while we're talking here. The visual flow, again, just reusing all our page objects as before. There's only a few new things here that you probably haven't seen before. This driver execute script, you just need to add it to basically initialize your testing session. And so I'm saying that these tests are being executed in a 1080p resolution. So that's, this is the 1080p that corresponds to this. I'm just saying I'm calling it 1080p. I'll show you how that looks in the UI. And then we're taking a snapshot. So this is one thing that you can add to your abstract base page, because it's every page of yours can actually use it. And it's just this JavaScript executor command doing this visual snapshot. And then you can pass in any string here. What this string will end up being representing is the name of your snapshot. And I'm simply making it dynamic just by reading the page object name and setting it as that. Again, I'll show that in the UI, how that correlates to the code. And that's really it. And all you're doing is just going through page by page, taking snapshots. And then at the end, you just ensure that you didn't get back any failures, which would come back in this response object. And you just check that there are no messages. And so we can see here, this was successful. Let me show you all the UI. So look here, Tihana is running her demo project using my API key. So that's appearing there. But here's the project that I just showed you all, right? You can see the sauce demo Java project that's here, that project name that we set. If I had said, oh, look, I got Patrick, here's your test as well, which are great too. We can even use Patrick's as an example. You can see he has one snapshot that's accepted, one in a new state. And then we can come here and view the states of the snapshots. So this is only from the take snapshot method. So you can see it automatically knows the combination that you use to run the tests. Here's that 1080p that is here. basically all the tests will appear here underneath under the 1080p, and then you can have other levels of organization to your tests. And then here's the snapshot. So here's one that's accepted. Accepted means that you've previously ran this test, you looked at your snapshot. That's the manual portion of all visual testing, is you manually have to validate whether the page looks correct, because there really is no automated way to figure out that the page is how you want it to look. And so you look and check, okay, everything looks wonderful here. You come and you accept it. So very first thing you want to do is just copy this command and run your tests, which is going to execute. The reason why I'm running solution tests, because I know they're working, right? I don't know what state we left the exercises in. So we're just going to run your solution tests and these tests. Just put this command in your terminal and then run it. I'm not going to run it now just because they'll take a little bit of time, but run it for yourself just to see how long stuff takes. I've previously ran it to show you guys, and for me, it took 8 tests, took 4 minutes and 1 second. Okay, so if we do that math, it's about 30 seconds per test. Okay, the problem with this approach, of course, is that as we add more tests, this time will continue to increase, and our time per test, of course, will increase as well. So we're going to implement parallelization, and it's extremely easy when you combine JUnit, when you use JUnit. It's harder with TestNG, for example, but with JUnit, it's extremely easy. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy this right here, and you're going to paste it into your POM.XML as one of the dependencies nodes. So let's go do that together. Here's my POM.XML. And then we want to put it in the, here. Wrong place. Like that. And no, I'm messing it up. Let me see here. There we go. That's right. You're going to put it at the same level as the dependencies. Okay, so you're going to put a build command here, a build tag, and that's going to have this code in here. This XML configuration is super simple, saying we're going to run all our classes and methods in parallel. So if you have, like, let's say 2 test methods in a class, it's going to run both of those in parallel. So it's going to be 2 independent threads running in parallel. We're saying up to 100 threads maximum. I limited it to 100 because I have 100 concurrent sessions available in Sauce Labs. If you're running it locally, for example, you might be able, like on a powerful machine, like on my Mac, I can probably get away with 50 to 75 running locally without too big of a problem. That's probably my limits. Using unlimited threads and just redirecting output to a file that's not really even related to running in parallel, but we're just not redirecting things to a file. And so now, with that said, this enables parallel execution. And so with our visual data-driven tests, what that's ultimately going to mean is we have our one test method that's running across 3 browser and operating system combinations. So that's going to be 3 tests in parallel running at the same time. The more, if you keep adding more tests, that'll just keep adding more threads. And then if we run it, we want it to run, what's that command? Oh no. Let me copy that command. We're going to run our suite now with parallelization enabled in the POM.XML. And so we'll come back up here, get to the dashboard before a bunch of the sessions already finish. It's a race against time. No, I didn't, but they're too fast. But you can, I wanted to show you guys parallelization of multiple sessions, what that looks like. But you can see that less than a minute ago, we already ran all of these sessions, right? Which was all of our tests. Each test method
got executed, and we can rerun it again, no big deal. And then of course our visual tests failed because there are some failures there, some differences, but give it a second. We'll see it all running in parallel again. Up to one session, there's 4. So it's up to 4 sessions in parallel here. A very small suite, of course, but now up to 6. And then all of that, of course, goes into a build. If we have configured it, you can see this is why builds are useful, because now we can start grouping tests to see, oh, this isn't even. And ultimately, if that worked for you all, when I ran it and just recorded the results, I got it. All my same tests ran in 54 seconds. And so just with that single action of enabling parallelization in our POM XML using Maven Surefire plugin, the way it works by enabling the multi-threading is basically what you're enabling in the POM XML. Every single instantiation of a new remote web driver will be a separate thread. So you can think about it as a totally separate test run. And of course, that instantiation will create a new session in Sauce Labs, and then that will run the VM. You can do the same thing through Docker or through Selenium Grid. It's really through Selenium Grid. So if you send multiple sessions to your Selenium Grid will start multiple sessions for you. One very important thing that I've seen with TestNG, for example, I personally prefer JUnit over TestNG, is you saw how easy it was to enable parallelization. TestNG natively isn't thread safe. So actually, if you have code that looks like this, which is correct code, and you're not going to be able to just run in parallel out of the box, you're going to need to start using thread local everywhere. So anytime you have elements that you want to access like this, you're going to need to also do thread local. And then I guess remote web driver, you're going to need to set your variables like this, the ones that will have the state, and then it's a little bit of extra work. At the end, in the resources, I have a tutorial, a YouTube tutorial on how to make that happen if you're using TestNG, for example. I'm going to go over front-end performance testing really quickly. I'm just going to run the tests for you all to show you what that looks like. And because the output of it is what's the most important. Get rid of this. And we are going to run. And what was it? Performance solution tests. There you go. Of course, the solution is there and ready for you to take a look at. I'll show you all the code while it runs. Another feature, if you do have Sauce Labs, it's enabled. As part of that, everyone gets access to it, is front-end performance testing. So you can see I just overrode the Chrome options. You have to do a few things. You have to set a name, set capture performance, and set extended debugging. Okay, whether you do that in Sauce bindings or in mutable capabilities, just enable those 3, and it allows you to do front-end performance. And all you have to do for front-end performance is very similar to visual, is you just visit the URL. And when you visit a URL, we automatically capture performance information for you for that page. And then you can use that to ensure there are no regressions in performance as over time. And I'll show you guys the output of that. So let's take a look at test results. So here it's running a perf test. Let me see if I have another one that, there we go. Here's another one I previously ran yesterday to test. I'll just show you guys that output. So you're going to get this performance tab at the bottom. And so for every URL, you can see here, for example, Sauce demo, it captures the performance metric. So here's a performance score underneath the hood. It's using Google Lighthouse APIs to get all of this data. And then here it has a bunch of information. And then if we take a look at, for example, the cart page, Here's the performance of the cart page, also pretty fast. And then if you wanted to, so Sauce Labs will automatically capture this for you, and it will keep track of it over time, up to 60 days. So if there were degradations, like now we can even see a compare. It's okay, there, it's done. We'll see a comparison because I previously ran this. It's still the same. So you can see February 23rd, 99, and today, February 24th, still 99. No variation here as well. So we're all good. But if there were, you would see some variation here. And then if you wanted to explore this report, there's this full report that you can come into, and you can analyze to see what's going on. Why are things so slow? Ultimately, I find the best usage of this is to just add it to your publicly facing applications that care about how fast the page renders and that end user experience, and then just track it to ensure that regressions aren't getting too big over time in the same environment using the same conditions. And then if they do happen to dip significantly, you can stop and say, hey, what happened here? Why is this page drastically slower? And then you and your team can figure out to see what went wrong.
Hey everyone, this is Mia here. And for the low cost of $0, you can make sure that she is happy and not so cranky simply by subscribing to my YouTube channel, commenting down below, and giving this video a thumbs up. So if you want to keep Mia happy, go ahead and do that.